Every day is a holiday. Every meal's a feast. When you travel down the gullet to the belly of the beast, welcome everybody to another episode of The Den. We are happy you could join us today. It is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, and we are just a short time away from the end of this semester when everyone's going to get a nice, well-earned break of sitting in their house alone, staring at the wall, waiting for the paint to dry. So light yourself a fire, preferably in a fireplace. Get a nice warm cup of cocoa and get ready to hear everything that's going on at a state level with everyone in the world. Wing it over to the crew. Welcome back, crew and guests. You are watching at, you were watching at thedenak.org, because then this guy with his big old fat fingers screwed everything up. So thank you to the crew. I know Elliot's in there rocking the chat, into the chat, the new link to get everyone moved over to this space. I think Clara's already done a redirect. So anyone that's watching now or watching at thedenak.org, thank you, producers. I really appreciate that you can fix what this old man breaks. It makes me so happy to know that the future of our world is in the hands of people whose fingers aren't dirty green sausages. Okay, so kicking it over, we have some guests today. I want to welcome Beth. Beth, welcome. Say hi, wave to the people out in the wide world. Beth, you're a teacher in Kenai, is that correct?
Yes, I have been with KPBSD for 10 years.
10 years? That's amazing. Well, welcome to the show. We're going to get to you in just a few minutes, but before we do, I got to ask you, is this early for you?
Yes, this is quite early for me, but I did it and I'm here.
You did it and you're here. You used to working with students who are a little bit older and get on to class a little bit later. So right now, when you do get to class and see them later, you'd be like, hey, everybody, you can go to thedenak.org and see that I was up way earlier than all of you, prepping to give you the time of your life. And they can never have, and it says right there, streamed at 7 a.m., and they can never argue that you were working overtime and you were rocking it. So thank you very much, Beth, for being here. Kicking it over some of our usual guests. Hey, Dr. Johnson, welcome back to the Den. It has been kind of a crazy week since we last saw you, so I'm wondering, how are things in your world?
Well, I'm still slightly traumatized from the pre-show conversation, but other than that, I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking.
So when you say traumatized, is that because of all the references to terrible films, or is that because watching us is kind of like watching three psychotic monkeys in a padded room full of trampolines?
Yes.
It's the imagery. It's good. All right. So anything big changes that have taken place at the state level since last Wednesday?
Yeah, just a couple of updates. One that you all probably know about more than I do, but, I hate to start on a downer, but I think we need to acknowledge that last week was a really tough week. The landslide in Haines, there's a teacher still missing there, and, it looks grim. Kindergarten teacher, a teacher that grew up in Haines, was a homegrown teacher, first-year teacher, and so it's just heartbreak upon heartbreak. And there were some other tragedies around the state last week involving students and schools, and so it was just a tough week that way. And so, our hearts grieve, but it gives us an opportunity to remember how much we appreciate our teachers and how much they mean in the individual lives of students. And so it was a tough week last week. The other thing that you all probably know about more than I do is there's districts are starting to make plans for reopening in January. I know Anchorage has a plan, and Juneau put out a plan yesterday. And so hopefully all that works well, and that on top of the vaccines the state is getting and the plan for all of that, we can start getting kids back in school to a greater and greater degree next year, 2021. It's not going to all happen at once. So I just encourage everybody to have lots and lots of patience. And I tell all the grown-ups in the world, just behave the way we expect students to behave and we'll be fine. And so everybody needs to have a lot of patience and a lot of grace. So that's my update. Hi, Beth. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Hi to everybody on the Kenai.
So, I gotta bring this up a little bit because we are going to acknowledge and talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's been going on in the state and a little bit later in the show. And I think that's something we need to do and something that's valuable for all of us because we need to be able to be talking about some of the things that are going on. We need to be able to process some of those ideas and move through those because that's what, it's what responsible humans who are emotionally sound and able to deal with those emotions do. They talk and they don't hide and ball it up inside and drive it down so that when they're 48 and really angry, they melt it with some kind of Valium. We want to be able to have those conversations and be healthy, grown-up adults, and we're going to do that. But before we do that, I have to pose a little bit of a question. It does bring it back up a little bit and bring up the energy a little bit, and that's okay because we will bring it back down. Don't worry. We're going to go back down into that valley. We're going to go there together. It's going to be great. But I got to tell you guys, last night, I had this sudden realization when the most wonderful child on the planet, Lily, her name is Lily. She's kind of amazing. You guys might know her. You might have met her. She comes up to me and she goes, Dad, how you doing? And I'm sitting by the fire reading the Icelandic sagas because you want to talk about a downer. Read the Icelandic sagas, right? And reading that, I have my cup of tea and I'm at the fire. And she goes, Dad, it's been a long time since we listened to What Does the Fox Say? And so, boom, of course, I had to, just get the phone, turn it on, throw it on every speaker in the house. And it was like involuntary dance reflex. And so after that, we ended up putting on Psy's Gangnam Style. My wife's sitting at the table looking at us like, oh, my goodness, I married this human being, and I'm stuck with him until he dies. And then on top of that, right, and then after that, of course, I was like, you guys should listen to this one. And I turned on Zombie Nation. And everyone in my house just turned around, walked away, and said, Dad, you're weird. But it brought up a really interesting thing because I was sweating. And there's just a puddle of sweat on the floor from the old fat man dancing around in ways no fat man should dance. And it was just crazy. But it brought up a question I wanted to pose to all of you. What is the song, for you guys in the show today, what is the song that when it comes on, you have an involuntary dance reaction?
In my house, it is Meghan Trainor, Better When I'm Dancing.
Ooh, we should be writing this down. I might have to turn that one on tonight. Okay, what do you got, Ben? What's yours?
Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson.
Ooh, now does it have to be the Michael Jackson version or the Alien Ant Farm version do you stand in?
Just the Michael Jackson
Just
version.
the Michael Jackson. You don't deal with this cover BS, right? No, none of that. None of that. It's the Prince of Pop or nothing. All right, Clara, you got something to add right there.
Mine is Don't Stop Me Now by Queen.
Ooh, look at that. We are reaching. There's two of you in this room right now that I'm a little bit surprised it wasn't like Katy Perry's Firework, right? So
You think very little of me, apparently.
No, I just don't understand because my connection to your understanding of music is bridged by an 8-year-old to a 40-year-old. So there's some gaps right there, right? Bria, what do you got for me?
Me and my mom always play this song when we have a bad day and need to dance, and it's the Get Up by Blanco Brown.
Nice. This is good. Dr. Ullman, you got to have something that was done by like a Greek philosopher on a rock with a stick, right? No?
No, one of my guilty pleasures is actually pop music, like high-tempo pop music. So when I drive to and from school, that's what I listen to. Although this morning, the walk-up music for the staff meeting, we're going to take it all the way back to 1985. Phil Collins, Susudio.
Oh, Phil Collins. Oh, let's have a conversation about Phil Collins later. I'm sending you a link to a South Park episode. All right. What do we got, Patrick? I know yours is like some crazy, like high-lung, like Norse death metal, right?
I can't think of any.
I don't listen to music, Butterfield. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kate, you got something good.
I actually have a kind of long list.
Give me one.
It's not long. It's just like a few. I'll give you my like top one. All Star by Smash Mouth. Shrek really ruined that one for me.
Okay, so Smash Mouth All Star. Is that the one you're talking about? Smash Mouth. Hey now, you're an All Star. Get your game on. Get paid. Elliot, what do you got, buddy?
Exactly.
So I also have a long list, but most of the songs on that list are from the band AJR, which is a really good band, and just about all of their songs I dance to.
Okay, so you got me. I have no idea who that is. You're going to have to send me a link later. Maddie, what do we got?
I have such a long list too, but one I can think of right now is "You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me" from Aladdin.
Yeah. So I got a question for all these people who are saying I have a long, long list. So if someone were to put a playlist together with all of those songs, would you die of exhaustion? Would you just keep dancing, or would you hit stop? Would you have to hit stop to stop?
I'm Elliot. I never stop dancing.
Oh, well, you're dancing right now. I mean, even while we're here, right? That's pretty awesome. John, what do you got, buddy?
Uptown Girl by Billy Joel.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay, Dr. Johnson, did I hit you yet?
No. So Beth took the one I was going to say first from the Peanuts movie. That's my favorite. And then somebody else mentioned Shrek because that's full of dancing. So I'll speak up on behalf of all the elementary kids and say either the Hokey Pokey or the Dirty Socks Fun Time Band Music Everywhere song.
That's fantastic. I got to tell you, the Hokey Pokey, it is what it's all about. Right? So who did I miss? Did I miss anybody? Because I'm trying to keep track of what everybody said in my mind so I can listen to it all later, because I'm just going to fall on the floor in a sweaty mess of exhaustion from this involuntary dancing.
I'm not much of a dancer, so I keyed in on the word involuntary. You guys all are talking about good songs, and I hate that when the chicken dance comes on, it makes my body move. So. Oh well, just we didn't get to do it this year, but it is family tradition at the Butterfield Hall that when we get together for Oktoberfest, all the men that enter the house are wearing lederhosen, and all the children must get up every time the chicken dance plays and dance with the fathers in their lederhosen. That is tradition in the Butterfield Hall. So if you ever get invited to the Butterfield Hall for Oktoberfest, Mr. Claymire, don't go unless you're ready to just because the dads wait like, hey, it's been like 3 minutes, let's play it again. And so it's just fantastic. We'll see you there. I'll see you there. And that's a great transition, Mr. Claymire, because you are the next one to talk to us. Tom Claymire, thank you for joining us today on the Den AK. Tell us what's happening in the wide world of NEAAK since we last met. Well, I think the commissioner covered it fairly well. Looking at lots of school districts going opening in person. All the school districts are open, some of them virtually right now, but more and more of them are talking about going back in person. I would add Kenai to the list. They this week made an announcement that they're coming back. Their elementary's coming back in January as well. And so that seems to be the momentum. I worry a little bit, the announcements of the vaccines. I don't know that it's related, but all of a sudden we're all talking about in-person stuff. And I just want to make sure that we're doing it safely and we're not rushing that. And we continue to socially distance and gather, not have gatherings at home and all the things, we're masking up in public and not going out in public as much as we can. And so until we get past this, because it's going to take a while for the vaccine to, suit its purpose. What do we need? 70% of the population to either have had COVID or be vaccinated before we'll see rates decline.
Whew, well, here we go again. I'm going to try to bring this show back up. And in doing so, one of the reasons we have this show, everybody, is to kind of celebrate some of the things that are happening around the state and get information from around the state on what's working and what's not working. And yes, I'm going to talk to everything that's been said here in just a few minutes, and we're going to kind of unpack a lot of there's some heavy stuff happening in here, all with this visage staying up and peppy. All right, so, and remember, everybody, this is armor. We'll talk about that in a little bit, too. But we are now going to kind of take some time, back up a little bit, talk to Beth a little bit about some of the things that she's been doing in Kenai, teaching at a distance, because it looks a little different than what we're used to here in Anchorage and what people are used to in the Valley and what people are used to in Fairbanks. And everyone's doing things a little bit differently. And I kind of wanted to talk to Beth a little bit and find out what's working for her, what tools seem to be working, and what are some of the exciting things that are coming out of this kind of strange time that will help us all kind of be better educators and better students. So Beth, welcome to the Den, AK. Not to put like a giant pile of stress right on your shoulders. We're the yoke of the world right now. Hello and welcome. So to keep it simple and straight, like, how have things been going? What does school look like for you teaching in Kenai?
So First of all, disclaimer, I was an online distance learning teacher before COVID-19. So I teach students from across the entire Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. I've got students that are out in the villages, and I've got students at Soldotna High School and everywhere in between.
So you're like old hat at this game. Like this is like walking the breezy park for you.
Well, yes, but no, because I have a caseload of 235 students or something this semester, which is more than the standard teacher sees. And those students oftentimes have a classroom teacher that sits at Kenai Central High School with them and keeps them on task and tells them to put their phone away and keeps them moving and motivated. And I just essentially provide the content, the curriculum, and do the grading. Certainly can help with the communication and flow when making clear expectations and stuff like that. But they typically have an adult that is there with them presently. And sending all of my students home brings up an array of differences in things like internet speed and technology accessibility and all of those kind of things that when they're in a building isn't such a big challenge.
Yeah, so I would turn that around and ask, like, what lessons have you learned about your approach and the technology that you use, or how you approach the technology you use? What have you learned? What lessons have you learned that have helped you bridge some of those gaps?
Well, I feel like at distance learning, we've always been very, very flexible in expectations for students and how we deal with students, right? Like I don't just have a classroom of 30 or 35 students that I have to keep moving to the next lesson. I can have this student who's just like, oh, I'm hunting for 2 weeks. What can I do to get ahead? And I'm just like, well, honestly, the entire curriculum for the semester is online. You're welcome to work at your own speed. You can finish the whole class in the first month if that's what you want. You need some extra time? I can give you extra time. I'm not essentially tied to the traditional semesters as tightly as teachers in buildings because all of my students are on a personalized track.
That's fantastic. So it kind of reminds me to I have to put things into perspective for me because I'm not smart. And so sometimes I have to put it into an understanding for myself. We talk a lot about film in here and about the experience of going to film and the idea of the escapism of film and how it separates us from the real world. And you kind of reminded me a little bit that school, when we're in the building, is kind of like that. It kind of is an escape from all of the real world around us, some of the troubles we have. If we're cold outside of school, we're warm in school. If we're hungry outside of school, we're often fed in school. If we're lonely outside of school, we often have people we can't stand all around us in school. And so you're not lonely when you hate everyone surrounding you, right? Or you love them, it's fine. And so all those things that the outside world presents, that reality, in a lot of ways, when we're in a building, it's like that moment we walk into a movie theater. We get to actually focus on why we came into the movie theater because everything else is darkened out. You came through the doors, you'd entered this magical world of separation from some of the reality that is distracting. And what you're kind of telling me is that for a long time now on this virtual school thing, as teachers, you guys had to adjust the fact that kids were still submerged in that reality. You didn't have the opportunity to really pull them out of it and put them into this kind of magical candy land, for lack of a better understanding. Am I processing that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. The challenges that students face at home are like, I cannot even name all of them. I have been reaching out to students on Zoom. I've been reaching out to students on the phone and reaching out to parents when I can't get a hold of students and trying to bring up some of those conversations. And like one dad I talked to last night, he's just like, that's great, except we're in the middle of building a house off grid. We don't have internet. We don't even have electricity and running water. At this point, my son is more focused on getting a roof over his head for the winter than doing schoolwork.
Well, I got to say, we are on the last frontier, and some of the stories I've been hearing this year remind me deeply that this still is a place where people are reaching out into the unknown and trying to put like a foot down into the wilderness and grow a space. So, man, what an exciting time. And I know that, not everybody here's like hears these stories and says, this is exciting, but I'm weird, and I see things like this as being really exciting to help us all kind of, I mean, think about it. 100 years ago, if someone were building a house in the middle of the frontier, we wouldn't even be having the conversation that they don't have electricity and internet to deal at their school work. We wouldn't even be thinking about the kid going to school. So the whole idea that we're in a place right now where we can have this conversation and try to brainstorm, how do we help you guys meet the needs you need to meet in order to be productive, well-educated, involved citizens of a democratic republic society? Like the fact that we're even thinking about let's keep everyone where they need to be and work with them and make things is pretty amazing to me. And what's been the kind of, what tool do you use to connect with students on a daily basis outside of Zoom? Like, where does that content sit, and how do you kind of curate what they're getting?
So our LMS, or learner management system, that we use here at the high school level on the Kenai is Canvas, and been using it for a couple of years. I have to admit, the lift is pretty hefty, right? It's a steep learning curve, but it is amazing to have students have all of their stuff in one place. We are getting more and more on a straight line path where everybody in my department now has the same course menu options and a homepage that looks somewhat the same, so that all of that content is really easily accessible for students. But Canvas is been a lifesaver. And the fact that it is district-wide and now statewide is huge. I'm excited to see that.
That's awesome. And I think, Mr. Claymire, I think pretty soon we're going to have an announcement about how we're going to build some of the access for those teachers statewide. When is that?
Actually, we can give a preview if you want.
Preview.
Yeah, you heard it here first on the Den. NEA Alaska board has approved sort of a grant for professional development for teachers to help create content that will be shared on a network across the state. Just sort of that, Dr. Johnson, I don't want to steal your thunder, but he likes to call it a community of learners, community of teachers. You know, and we've described, you know, walking down the hall in previous, what do we call these sessions? Installments. Installments of the show, where you walk down the hall and borrow a lesson from a more experienced teacher, and in this case, we put everybody in the whole state down the hall from each other, because you can just pop into the Alaska Commons and know that there's good stuff and vet it. And so what we need to do, though, is to populate that area and create the space where there's the content. So we're doing a couple things. We're going to do professional development for teachers and teach them how to do that. And then they can start posting content and pulling down other stuff that they want to use in their classrooms. And then we're also going to, this is the exciting part, we're kind of going to offer cash prizes. We're having our legal consultants right now make sure that we're doing everything properly. But yeah, we're going to offer cash prizes for all the teachers that put material up. There's going to be some process for entering sort of a drawing and for, you know, based upon the material that they put up, and draw names out of a hat and hopefully win some money.
You heard it here, folks. Cash money. All right, so coming back to it. Hey, Beth, I'm going to leave you with one last question, then stick around if you'd like to. We'd love you to stay to the end because it's going to be fun and interesting and everything else. But one thing that we talked about earlier in the week that I thought was pretty fun to bring up to these kids who show up here every Wednesday at 6:45 for show prep. Plus, what you may not know is these guys are coming in here Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday at 7 a.m. in order to prep for this work, in order to read up on journalistic styles, writing essays, and in fact, doing interviews, which we're going to get to in just a couple minutes. So I wanted to pose this to you a little bit, knowing that, and it's going to make them upset, so I'm really excited about it. At what time will many of your students be actually getting up and starting to engage with your work?
Whenever they want to.
Oh, hey, everybody, you super jealous right now? You should be. Look,
my lessons are completely 100% asynchronous. I do not expect anybody to be on any scheduled Zooms unless you make a personal appointment with me, and I can tell you those appointments typically don't start until after 1 p.m.
Everybody on that screen right now is planning my demise. So Thank you very much for letting us know that. We are going to move in a little bit to something cool that's happening around here. We do have a couple of neat interviews that students from this program have put together to share with folks out there. Elliot's going to do a great job of grabbing those and putting them into the links into the chat. We have two really good interviews that directly impact some stuff that's going on around the state. First off, we have an interview from with GCI, and I'm going to let Bria take a minute here to kind of tell us a little bit about it, and then Elliot's going to throw that into the chat. You guys will be able to click on that link, pause it, listen to it in a little bit, but she's going to give you a brief overview of what you're going to have access to. It's some really neat information about something that's coming out with GCI. Go ahead, Bria.
So in my interview, I sat down with a marketing strategist from GCI, and we just discussed like how they've been navigating the COVID world and what they've been doing to help out. And then basically just the new developments that they've been working on and that they're getting ready to roll out to customers all over Alaska. So it's really exciting. There's some really cool information for GCI customers and prospects out there.
So I got to ask you, are you allowed to say on this show what one of those things they're rolling out is? It's the big one. It's the big one that surprised me.
Yeah, in the interview we talked about it. They're working on this service called Uconn TV. And they've done some announcements about that before. Basically, they're making their own streaming service, which will be really cool.
We have another thing to just dive into and not crawl up from for episode after episode after episode. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Yes. I'm excited.
I'm excited. Clara, how about you? What did you? Now, yours is a little bit different. You actually went out in a different size business and had a good interview that kind of explains what it means to be around now. So can you give us a little bit of an upfront on that? And Elliot's going to throw that link right in the chat.
Yeah, so I talked to a local business owner, the owner of Uncle Joe's Pizzeria here in Anchorage. And we just kind of talked about the effect of the new shutdown on his business. And luckily, since it's a pizza restaurant, he has had less trouble than a lot of other places have, but talked a lot about how other restaurants have been seeing bigger effects and how you can help with those restaurants stay open.
And so could you give us a clue, like as the people in this room and maybe other people that might have the means and things like that, what is one way we can help local businesses as this is going on in this kind of new hunker down in a place like Anchorage or maybe other places around the state?
Just keep ordering like curbside pickup and to-goes. There was a lot of focus on that in the beginning of the pandemic, and it's kind of dropped off. But I'm sure there are still websites up that have all of those in one place. I know that we shouted those out in the spring. So just kind of refocus on that because a lot of businesses are struggling.
And I think it's appropriate to also maybe point out and get that link right in the chat, Elliot. I really thank you very much. And watch both of these interviews and take a gander and a listen. These are radio-based podcast interviews, so there's not a lot to see, but you can be listening to them and really get some information about what's going on in the state. But I also think something to think about, if you have the means, ordering takeout isn't necessarily always just for you. There are a lot of people right now that could handle a nice takeout, and some of them are pretty cold outside. So, it doesn't hurt to grab a couple pizzas and stop somewhere and drop them off if you are so inclined. And that helps local businesses, and it helps the people that might be a little bit hungry and a little bit cold. So remember, if you have the means, this is a good time to be helping each other out. And moving on to that and kind of talking about that a little bit, I'm really proud of our audience and the audience that follows us on Instagram at SAHS The Den. So I'm really, really proud because last week a poll was put out for we run the drive-in theater here at South every week, and we take a big chunk of everything that we make from that and donate it every weekend to a different charity. We've donated to Beans Cafe. We've donated to Clare House through Christchurch with Pastor Tracy. We have donated to the Covenant House. And who else we donate to already? I think that's the 3 so far. And then our viewers and the folks participating on Instagram at SAHS The Den, poll was put out last week. And who did they decide would get all of December's donations? Bria?
Donations this month are going to Awake, which is Abused Women's Aid in Crisis. It's a shelter for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault.
And it's one thing that, even though we've mentioned it here and there, and it is a big conversation piece on a statewide and a citywide level, is that we're seeing reporting of this go down in a lot of ways, and a lot of that is because, guess what? When we're not at schools and we're not at our offices and stuff, those signs aren't always getting seen by people from outside of those relationships. And I'm going to tell you right now, those relationships are tough to break away from. So places like Awake, I'm super proud of our audience to recognize that this is an area that could use some support and some help. And I'm super proud of our crew right here who put that option on the table as an option and thought that option up. You guys have every day I see you, every day I leave, and this is where the character breaks and we get into a strange space, everybody. You guys impress me to no end, okay? Your humanity and your hearts are amazing. And we are in a really strange place right now, everybody back home. Really strange place. Something you may not know about the character that comes on here all rowdy-dowdy is all armor. But I'm going to peel it away for just a minute. I'm going to point something out. I've been through 2 wars, and I don't like to bring this up on air. And we're in a space right now that is near the end of one. And there's this really dangerous enemy that is unseen that we are going up against as a group and as everybody on the ground. But there's another one that can sneak in at this moment, and that thing is called complacency. And we need to be really careful. And when we hear all the good news that we have backup coming in and that we have this special way to move forward and there's light at the end of the tunnel, it's when complacency gets the worst. Articles coming out all over the place talking about how we really need to be together. There's a part of us that really needs to be with our family that is going to just blow off a lot of the stuff and try to be careful as we go and everything else. Be careful with what you're doing. This is a thing we can't see move. It is quick. It is silent. We don't know it's in until it's there. And we need to be careful. And there are certain things we can do to try and slow it down and stop it. And getting complacent right when we see the end of this can make a really bad outcome in a lot of ways. It is time to realize how dark this space can get. And we're always happy and moving and jumping around in here. And I get it and I love it. And I bring that to the table. But it also, we have to recognize we're sad about some things that are happening around the state right now. We're hurting by the loss of friends and family. We're scared about what we don't understand. We're angry in a lot of ways because different levels of leadership don't seem to be in common ground because they see things from different points of view and they see different pictures and the decisions don't always coordinate. And for us on the ground, that gets confusing and it gets scary. And it gets frustrating that we have to continue slogging and carrying the weight of all those decisions being changed back and forth and not agreeing at leadership levels. You guys, I have seen this in real combat. I've seen the same thing taking place. I've seen the same thing setting in on people. Brace yourselves. Tighten your belts. Make sure you're calling people. I've been on the phone twice this week with family members thinking about suicide. Call the people you love. Let them know you love them. And remember that in dark times, there is someone wiser than all of us, written by someone wiser than many of us, who has an answer because nobody likes being in these times. And nobody likes what's going on. And it's tough to navigate, and we have to navigate it together. And so the armor's gone. I want to thank you for watching today. Watch next week at the AK Den, thedenak.org. Send your questions to asktheden.org. And in these dark times, remember, nobody likes him, but there is wisdom that we can remember and hold on to.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, but